Hey everyone, my name is Choate and I'm with Keller Williams Realty and I'm a local agent here in Bakersfield, California. Today I want to break down the buying process from start to finish. So whether you're a first-time home buyer or maybe you bought a property before, maybe you forgot about what the buying process looks like. And if you bought a home prior to August 17th last year, the buying process has definitely changed as there was a new settlement that came in last year, which we'll kind of talk about. So where do you start if you're a new home buyer? What's that process look like? Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is set up an appointment with your agent. Now, one thing I recommend, especially with the new settlement that came out last August 17th, is interview multiple agents. Interview 2 to 3 agents to find the best fit for you because there was a new settlement that came out last August 17th. And pretty much what this new settlement statement was is you have to sign a buyer broker agreement before you walk into any property. So you are not allowed to view any properties now without signing a buyer broker agreement with an agent that you're working with. So before you can even walk in a house, you're going to have to sign some type of contract with your agent. Now, there is a short form version and a long form version. The short form version gives you access to 3 properties with your agent, and this is going to allow you to kind of get to know your agent, make sure they're a great fit, but it's only going to be for 3 properties. So if you plan on looking at more than 3 properties in one day, then you're going to have to sign the longer form agreement, okay? But if you just have 1 property you're looking at or up to 3 properties, you can sign the short form version. Now, I'm based in California, so you're going to want to make sure whatever state you're in and check the guidelines for your state. But here in California, the short version allows you to look at 3 properties. The long form allows you to look at as many properties as you want. And the long form version can be as short as 1 day or it can be as long as 3 months. Now, if you go to the long form version, I don't recommend you signing a 1 day contract because if you sign a 1 day contract and we go look at a property today and you want to go back out tomorrow, well, you're going to have to sign another documentation. You're almost better off signing that short form version. So if you sign the long form version, I recommend at least, 30 days. That way you don't have to sign every time and it just gives you access to view as many properties as you want. Now, there is an exclusive and a non-exclusive agreement, and make sure you know the difference because here's one thing I see often is sometimes buyers who come into the market, some agents are scared to have this conversation with their buyers, so they view properties without even signing the agreement, right? And then when they submit their offer, the agent submits that buyer broker agreement on the back of the contract, and then they sign the contract that day, and they don't know if they signed an exclusive or non-exclusive agreement. So when I talk about sitting down with an agent and interviewing them, one question, ask them about the buyer broker agreement because you don't want to get stuck into something that you're not comfortable with. So there's an exclusive, non-exclusive. Non-exclusive pretty much means that the agent you're working with is only going to get paid if you end up purchasing a property that they took you out to see, that they ran numbers on for you, that they got information for you, that they checked with the lender and had a lender run numbers for you on that property. If you were to purchase that property that agent helped you look at with another agent, then you could be on the hook for paying that agent, okay? Now, if you sign the non-exclusive agreement and let's say I take you out to look at 123 Main Street, but you end up purchasing another property with another agent, you end up purchasing 123 Banana Street, but we have a non-exclusive agreement, you wouldn't have to pay me, you would only pay the agent that you are working with because it's non-exclusive. Now, if you sign an exclusive agreement, well, it doesn't matter. If I take you to look at 123 Main Street, but you end up buying 123 Banana Street with another agent and I had nothing to do with that property, I didn't take you out to look at it, run numbers or anything like that, you could still be on the hook for paying me if we were under contract during that time. So make sure you know the difference. Make sure you know the non-exclusive and the exclusive agreement, okay? Because that's, like I said, that's one thing I probably see out here. Agents are scared to have this talk with their clients. And the reason they're scared to have the talk with their clients is the big thing that changed in the settlement is now when you sit down with your agent, you have to negotiate a commission that you're comfortable paying to your agent whenever you close on that property. So some agents are scared to have that conversation. Now, That commission fee is negotiable. So if an agent tells you that fee isn't negotiable, well, that's just not true. So that fee is negotiable. It can be 1%, it can be 3%. It's really whatever you and your agent agree upon. So just remember, when you go out and you sign that contract, that fee you're paying, your commission, is negotiable, okay? Now, one thing I will say about whatever fee you end up signing with your agent, even though let's say you say, hey, buyer agent, I'm willing to pay you 3%. Well, when we go submit your offer, we can still ask that the seller pays your buyer agent commission. Now, they don't have to. It's really up to the seller. And one thing I can tell you, since we've been doing this on August 17th, over 20 plus deals, I've only seen my buyer have to pay my commission one time. For the most part, we're still seeing seller pay buyer agent's commission. But just know, when you do sit down and have this conversation with your agent, that you're going to have to negotiate a commission, and that commission is negotiable. So that's important to know. Now, interview your agents. Okay, so that's the first thing. You're going to want to reach out to a few different agents, find somebody you feel comfortable with. And after you find somebody you feel comfortable with and you start working with that agent, the next step after your pre-buyer consultation is you're going to want to set up an appointment with a lender. Now, we want to set up the appointment with the lender because we need to go out and get pre-qualified. A lot of times, one thing I see, probably the biggest mistake I see with buyers, is they want to go out and view homes first, and that's just not the way you're going to want to do it, and let me tell you why. One thing I see quite often is people want to go look at a property they found on Zillow or Realtor.com. They want to go out and view a property. They go to the house, they fall in love with the property, and now they want to submit an offer. But we cannot submit an offer without the pre-qual letter. So what happens? We have to schedule our meeting with our lender. We have to go meet with the lender, and here's what always happens. One, by the time we get you pre-qualified, the house that we went to look at, it's gone. You can't even purchase it anymore. So a lot of times I see buyers get their hopes up for a property they love, and then they can't purchase it because it goes under contract while we're getting pre-qualified. Two, we don't end up qualifying that high for a house. Or three, you don't end up qualifying at all because credit isn't there, or you don't have enough saved up for your down payment or closing costs. So you definitely want to go meet with your agent first. Then after you meet with your agent and you go over what are the steps in the buying process, what are your do's, what are your don'ts when purchasing. After you have that initial conversation and you find the agent you want to work with, then we're going to get you over to the lender and we're going to go over numbers. Now, one thing I tell my clients all the time, don't so much focus on the interest rate, right? And don't focus so much on how high you qualify. What you want to focus on is, what do you feel comfortable with the monthly payment? Because at the end of the day, that's what you should worry about, because that's the payment you're going to be making, not the interest rate. So focus on where you feel comfortable with the monthly payment, because as far as the interest rate, whether it's high or low, if your interest rate is high, there's things we can do to get that down, right? One, we can go new construction. New construction a lot of times has really good rates. They have builder incentives where you can get money back from the builder, used towards your closing costs, plus used to buy down your interest rate to get a cheaper interest rate. So we can also do that on a resale home. We can go out to go purchase your property, and we can ask the seller to help cover some of your closing costs, and with the money they give you, we can use that and buy down your interest rate to get a cheaper interest rate, which is going to get you a cheaper payment. Now, if the interest rates are lower, just know you're probably going to have to come out of pocket more money, because when interest rates drop, usually you get a swarm of buyers coming to the market, which drives up home prices, and you end up paying over asking price, or you end up having to come out of pocket more money, and we're not able to get the closing costs from the seller for a rate buy down. So, there's pros and cons. So at the end of the day, focus on where you feel comfortable with the monthly payment. Don't let the rate dictate when you buy or sell, because there's options that we can do to get that rate down, right? So focus on that monthly payment. So after you sit down with your lender, and I recommend sitting down with your agent and lender about 2 to 3 months prior to you actually purchasing a property. And here's why: because when you do sit down with your lender, sometimes your credit isn't there, or sometimes we don't have your down payment saved. So this just gives us time to come up with a plan to get you to where you need to be. So I can't tell you how many times that we've sat down with the lender and credit was right there, right? We were super close, and maybe we just needed to pay down our credit card to a 30% utilization. And then in 30 days or 45 days, we have the credit where we need to be at. And now we're able to purchase. Okay. So usually start your process about a couple months out prior to you actually being ready, just so we can come up with a plan, because even if credit isn't there, we can run a what if simulator to see what we need to do in order to get you qualified. Or if you don't have enough money for your down payment or closing costs, we can go over programs for a down payment assistance program, or maybe you can get a gift of funds from family or friends. Or maybe we can pull out of your retirement, right? We can go over all those options to see what's the best option for you. But let's just say we sit down with our agent, we had that meeting, it went great, we signed our contract. Now we sit down with the lender, we turned in all our documents, and now we're pre-qualified. And so that's where the fun comes in, right? We get our pre-qual letter, we know how much we're qualifying for. Now we know what homes we can see that are within our price range, okay? So once we get that pre-qual letter, we're good to go. We're ready to go out and look at properties and start submitting offers. So as soon as we find out what you qualify, how I do it is I usually start sending out a list of properties that I feel may be a good fit for you, right? Because we had our initial meeting. I kind of know what you're looking for now. I'm going to send you some homes that are within your range and are what you're looking for, okay? And a lot of times, most of you guys are going to be on Zillow and Realtor.com. You're going to find properties too. Feel free to shoot those over to whatever agent you're working for, as we have access to the MLS and we're able to look up any property. So once we get our pre-qual letter, we're out looking at properties now. And here in California, out here in Bakersfield, the lock boxes stay open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that's usually the window we can look at properties Monday through Sunday. So we'll start going out, we'll start viewing properties. And once you start looking, you're going to want to stay within your range. You're not going to want to go over whatever your pre-qual price is, right? You can, to an extent, if a home's been on the market maybe 30 plus days, maybe there's some wiggle room on that price. But here's one mistake I see sometimes is you're qualified for $350 and now you want to look at homes at $400,000. What I can tell you is you're not going to get that property, right? Unless that property has been on the market, 150 days or something, some crazy number like that, you're not going to end up getting that property. Because you have to think, if sellers were going to sell it that low, let's say $50,000, $60,000 under the list price, they probably would have made some cuts already to see if they could get any traction. So try to stay within your range. What I like to tell my buyers is if we're going to look and you want to look at homes over your price range, don't really go more than $10,000 over whatever your max budget is. In today's market, there is some flexibility, so we might be able to go a little bit over, but you're not going to want to go something crazy, $40,000, $50,000, whatever you're pre-qualified at. So once we start looking at homes and you finally find the property that you like, now we can submit an offer. And I'm going to kind of tell you how me and my team work an offer whenever we submit an offer. Before we submit your initial offer, I like to sit down with you, or we have a phone conversation and we go over, okay, guys, here is the property you liked. I looked at the numbers. I think it's going to come in at value whenever the appraisal happens. Where do we feel comfortable with an offer? Where do you want to submit an offer? Do you want to go to your max budget of $350? Perfect. You're comfortable with your max budget at $350? Great. So here's what I usually like to do. I usually like to reach out to our lender, have the lender send you numbers at the sales price. I want you to look over the numbers. I want you to see what that monthly payment's going to be. I want you to see what the out-of-pocket is going to be. After you look at those numbers, and if you feel comfortable, we'll get the offer submitted, because I don't want you to be surprised once we get into escrow and your lender sends out your disclosures and you look at the disclosures and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know it was going to be that payment, or wow, I didn't know the closing cost was going to be that much. And then you get scared and you want to back out, right? So we look at all that up front and make sure you're comfortable up front prior to submitting the offer, okay? Now we submit the offer per contract. That offer can be good for 3 days. So you don't always get a response right away. But per the contract, usually offers are good for 3 days. Doesn't mean that they can't accept it on day 4 or 5, but just know sellers have some time to look at their property, at their offers, as other offers may be coming in when you're submitting yours. So don't expect an answer back right away sometimes. It may be a day or two before you actually get get an answer. Usually I'll check with the agent prior to submitting the offer to let them know the offer is coming in. Then the next day I'll follow back up with them to see how are we looking, when can we expect an offer, and throughout the process I'll keep you updated on what's going on. So after we submit the offer, and let's say they call back and say, congratulations, we are accepting your offer. So what are the next steps after you get an accepted offer, right? Well, let's say we got the offer accepted and we open escrow today. So the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to open up escrow. You're going to have 3 days to take your deposit, or it's called an EMD, your earnest money deposit. So usually your deposit is going to be 1% of whatever the sales price is. So we've been using $350,000. Let's say your offer was at $350,000 and we got it accepted. Your down payment's probably going to be like $3,500, okay? Now let's talk about some of your upfront costs. So your deposit has to be taken to escrow within the first 3 days, okay? So your deposit, that's going to go towards your closing costs. So let's just say your closing cost is $20,000. Well, deduct that $3,500 from your $20,000 closing cost, and that's what you're going to end up having to pay at the end, because your deposit's actually going to go towards your closing costs. So at the end, you'd pay, $16,500 instead of $20,000 because they're going to use your deposit. Now, another thing that goes towards your closing costs is your appraisal. Now, your appraisal is going to cost somewhere between $500 to $700. Your appraisal will be sent to you by your lender to pay. So your lender will send out a link and you'll click on the link and pay. It's going to run you somewhere between that $500 to $700. So those two upfront costs actually go towards your closing. Now, a couple things that don't go towards your closing, and I definitely recommend doing, are your inspections. So you can have your general inspection. Here in Bakersfield, just a regular inspection is probably going to cost you somewhere between $450 to $550 depending on the size of the house. If it has a pool, then you can expect that to go up between $650 to $700. Now, you don't have to have your inspection, but I definitely recommend you paying for that inspection, because if you end up backing out, right, because there ends up being a lot of repairs, I'd rather you lose the $450, $500 than to purchase this property without a home inspection, and now wintertime comes and now there's a leak in your roof, right? And now there's nothing we can do to help you with that leaky roof, right? Because we didn't have our home inspection done during escrow, okay? So we have our deposit and our appraisal. That stuff we have to pay. We pay it up front. That goes towards your closing costs. Your home inspection, it's not going to go towards your closing costs, but I definitely recommend having that done. You can also have a termite inspection done. That's going to run you anywhere between $65 to $75, and that doesn't go towards your closing cost either, okay? But it's just something I definitely recommend. And you can have roofing companies. A lot of roofing companies will go out for free and give you an estimate. If it needs a new roof, or let's say maybe it just needs a roof cert, you can have a roofing company go out there. You can pretty much have any company, any type of inspector go out on the property, because we're going to have our contingency. So let's kind of talk about the contingency period. Most escrows are a 30-day escrow, okay? The first 17 days are your contingency periods. And I know state by state, this kind of changes, because sometimes we help people relocate to different states, and their contingency periods, I've seen them as low as like 10 days. So it's going to vary depending where you're at. But here in California, you have a 17-day loan and 17-day inspection period. So pretty much what that means is we're going to have 17 days to do any type of inspection you want. So your home inspection, like we talked about, you can have a plumber, roofer, termite, anything you want. You pretty much have 17 days to do all the inspections you want. After 17 days, you can't have any inspections done unless the seller agrees to it, right? But within that 17 days, you can pretty much have everything done. Also, one thing to note during that 17-day contingency period, you can pretty much back out for any reason and you're going to get your deposit back. Okay, so let's say you have the home inspection and that inspection just came out really, really bad, right? Well, if you decide you want to back out within those 17 days, we can back out, cancel escrow, you're going to end up getting your deposit back, okay? The issue sometimes buyers run into is if they try to back out after 17 days and you've released your contingency. So pretty much what that means is on day 18, you sign the contingency removal and you send that into the sellers. If you were to try to back out after day 17, you run the risk of losing your deposit, okay? So first 17 days, pretty much back out for any reason, gonna get your deposit back. Anything after 17 days, if you release your contingencies and you try to back out, you run the risk of losing your deposit. So I have seen clients lose deposit. I've seen clients back out the day before closing. You lose your deposit. So just know you first 17 days, back out pretty much for any reason, going to get your deposit back. Anything past the 17 days, you run the risk of losing your deposit. Now, during that 17-day contingency period, we talked about paying for your appraisal. You're also going to have an appraiser go out to the property, okay? So the appraisers pretty much goes out there. They pretty much protect the bank, right? They're going to go out there and say what they feel the home is worth. So they're going to pull comps in the area. Usually they stay within a quarter of a mile. They're going to pull comps to see if the home is worth what you're purchasing it for, okay? Now, if the appraiser goes out there, let's say we're buying at $350 like we've been talking about. Let's say the appraiser goes out there and he says, hey, no, this home's only worth $340. Well, now your lender's only going to lend you what the home is worth. So your lender now would only lend you $340. And we'd go back to the sellers and tell them, hey, the appraisal came in low. Now we're submitting an addendum now to purchase this property at $340 because that's what it's valued at. The seller can now sell it to you at $340. Or they can come back and ask you for more money to cover the difference. So we see this come up. Sometimes it doesn't always come up. What usually happens is if the home comes in under value, a lot of times the seller ends up selling it for whatever the new sales price is, or sometimes they'll negotiate with you to see if you can come out of pocket a little bit more to give some more money on top of, if it came in at $340, but you were purchasing at $350, sometimes they'll ask for a little bit more money. But for the most part, most of the time, I see the sellers end up selling it for whatever the home comes in at value. But that doesn't mean they have to. Sometimes they do back out if an agreement's not reached, okay? So 17 days, deposit within the first 3 days. You're going to pay for your appraisal. The appraiser's going to go out there. One thing to note, if the appraisal calls out any repairs, so let's say the appraiser called out the water heater because it's not double strapped. In order for your loan to fund and for you to close, those repairs have to be done. So anything the appraiser calls out, those repairs have to be done. Most of the time, the seller takes care of the repairs because if those repairs aren't done, we can't close. But every now and then we run into a situation where seller says, hey, we're not doing any of the appraisal required repairs. Buyer, if you want to purchase a property, you're going to have to do those repairs. So at that point, it'd be up to you if you wanted to do the repairs, but just know if something gets called out on the appraisal, any type of repairs, they have to be done in order to close and fund your loan. But most of the time, we ask for the seller to do those repairs. Okay, so deposit up front, your appraisal, right? 17-day contingency period, you can pretty much back out for any reason within those 17 days, okay? Now, past day 17, let's kind of talk about that a little bit. So let's say the inspection came in and now we sit down and we do something that's called a request for repairs. So once we get that inspection, we're going to schedule a time to sit back down and go over the inspection. Now we sit down and we write up any repairs that you want done on the property. So let's say the roof was kind of messed up. We can request for them to have a roofer come out. Let's say there was a leak under the sink. We can request that the leak gets fixed. Let's say the termite said, hey, there's about $2,500 worth of termites. We can ask the seller to do these repairs. Now, one thing to note, sellers do not have to do those repairs. So one thing I tell my buyers when we get to this spot in the transaction is you're pretty much buying this property as is, but we can still ask the seller to do some of these repairs. Now, one, the seller can say, no, I'm not going to do any repairs. They can say, two, hey, I'll do this repair, but I'm not doing this repair. Three, I will give you a credit and you can have all the work done. Those are usually the three things we see happen. Now, if they decide they're not going to do any of those repairs, well, that's going to be up to you to decide if you want to move forward. If we're before those 17 days and we find out that they're not going to do any repairs, fine, you can back out, and you're going to get your deposit back. If we're at day 18 and up and you find out they're not going to do any repairs, if you try to back out because of the repairs and you've released your contingencies, well, like we talked about earlier, you're going to run the risk of losing your deposit, okay? So we'll sit down though, we'll write up the request for repairs, we'll submit it to the sellers, and sellers will go over it with their agent, and then they're going to send you a response to your request for repairs, and it's going to tell them what they've decided to do, whether it's they're not doing any repairs, whether they're going to give you a credit for all the repairs, or whether they're going to do some of the repairs that you requested, okay? Once we get that document back, once we come to an agreement, you can sign it and we send it off, and now the repairs, start happening. So usually the repairs for the property are going to usually happen after that day 17 mark is usually when we see it, okay? So let's say we sat down, had the request for repair, we submitted it to the seller. Seller says, I'm going to do all the repairs, okay? So repairs start happening, seller calls their contractors, call their termite companies, and they start all the repairs. Once they've completed the repairs, they'll let us know. They'll send us invoices so you can have on record showing that the repairs were actually done, okay? Now, once we get to day 25 of that contract, you can pretty much have your final walkthrough scheduled anytime after that, okay? We just need to make sure all the repairs are done, because you don't want to do your final walkthrough and there's still some repairs that need to be done, okay? So let's say day 25 hits and all the repairs have been done, okay? We'll schedule a final walkthrough and we'll go back to the house. During the final walkthrough, we bring a list of the repairs that needed to be done. We check and make sure all those repairs were done. When we're there, I like turning all the lights on. I like flushing all the toilets. I like to leave all the water running in the sinks just to make sure, we don't have any leaks, make sure all the electrical is still working. If there were outlets that were tested or weren't tested, because sometimes you'll notice on the home inspection, if there's things blocking it, they won't test the outlets. So I like to bring like a phone charger and we'll plug it in, we'll test all the outlets and make sure everything's working. It's pretty much going to be your last time to walk through this property prior to you buying the home. So we want to make sure all the repairs that said were done are complete. We want to make sure, we don't have any new leaks or anything that came up. We want to make sure all the electrical and everything is working. We just want to test everything to make sure everything is fine prior to you moving into your property. Now, if we do the final walkthrough and everything is good, then we'll sign off on something called a verification of property, send it into the seller, let them know we did our final walkthrough. Now, if we walk through this property and maybe they haven't finished some of the repairs, or we find a new hole in the wall from when they were moving out that wasn't there last time, on that verification of property, we can write, any notes in there and send it back to the seller, telling them, hey, we did our walkthrough, but we noticed that the fascia boards that were supposed to be done on the termite weren't complete, and now there's a hole next to the front door where they hit it with something when they were moving out. We need this stuff taken care of so we can submit that, okay? So, but let's just say everything was clean. We did our final walkthrough. Everything was done. We submit the verification of property, telling them we did our final walkthrough. The next step is going to be day 29. Escrow is going to reach out to you and schedule you to come in to sign your final paperwork and to wire your money. Now you can wire or you can take a cashier's check, whatever you want to do, but escrow will call you to come in to sign all your documents with the notary and to wire your money on day 29. Now on day 30, congratulations, you just purchased your new property. As soon as the funds hit escrow and your loan is funded, the escrow company is going to call the assessor's office and record that you are the new owner and you are now a property owner, and now it's time to meet at the property and hand you your keys. So congratulations, you just bought your first property, or maybe you've now bought your second or third property. So let's break it down one last time. Sit down with your agent, interview your agents, go over that process, make sure you pick the right agent for you. 2, meet with your lender, get pre-qualified. 3, start searching for properties until you find the property you like. 4, submit your offers and make sure you're comfortable with the offer. After you get the offer accepted, we have a 30-day escrow. First 3 days, we're going to take our deposit in. You're also going to have that 17-day contingency to do all your inspections, have all your repairs requested to the seller to be done. After day 17, sellers are going to start working on the repairs. Day 25, we can schedule our final walkthrough within those last 5 days. Do our final walkthrough, sign off on that. Day 29, you're going to go and meet with the escrow company, sign all your documents, wire your money. Day 30, you are closing on your property, and now you're a homeowner. So that's pretty much it. The buying process in a nutshell, kind of like we talked about earlier. A few little tips again. Make sure a couple months prior to when you want to purchase, start scheduling your interviews with your agent, just so we can make sure we're ready to go whenever you're ready to go. So if you have any questions or you want to set up a free consultation, whether it's via Zoom or you want to get together in person, or maybe you want a quick 10 to 15 minute appointment over the phone, you can always reach out. My name is Chris Choate. Number is 661-444-8156. So if you want to book an appointment with me or sit down with me and my team to go over numbers or see about getting pre-qualified and going over the buying process, feel free to reach out. And if you haven't liked or subscribed, make sure to do that as we're releasing videos every single week. So till next time, we'll see you guys.